Hi, everybody. Today I have the privilege of talking to Dr. Duggins. I've been in conversation with him in the months, and I'm highly grateful for Doc. He's kind of a legend in the field because when I was preparing for my advanced standing program and going to national board, I asked people like, where should I prepare for the bench exam? And the first name I ever heard in the field was Dr. Duggins. And he's been preparing people with the psychomotor skills, especially advanced standing students like me. He's based over off in California. He taught in Loma Linda in the past too as a full-time faculty, but now he primarily focuses on helping students and dentists improving their psychomotor skills in restorative dentistry. So thank you, Doc. Thank you for giving us
hmm
today.
Well, yeah, and I hope it's more than just psychomotor skills. There's so much to the dental practice beyond that. And, I was just talking to a friend of mine this morning about, what dentists are aware of with regard to patients and patients' situations, and especially when a patient's been traumatized in the past. So there are times where this comes up when I'm lecturing and talking to my students and so forth. And, we try to talk about real life situations because, when we're studying, even when we're just studying for an exam, learning how to do a class two, you're not going to learn how to do a good class two unless you realize what's wrong with the tooth and, what are the typical things that go wrong with the tooth and how do we deal with them? How do we choose the restorative materials? How do we design a prep based on the choice of the restorative material and based on what's wrong with the tooth? And so there's so much to it that I like to think that I'm bringing a fairly full picture to my students during my classes.
So yes, I should have mentioned that there's a lot of other aspect of dentistry doc is teaching as well. There are courses on other aspects as well. So most of our audience who's going to be foreign trained dentists and who I when we talk earlier too, I've seen a lot of people who get this invite from University of Colorado, from Western University, from other places like University of Iowa, and then they go in, they have a great interview, but when it comes to bench exam, they weren't preparing enough. Because what I've learned in dentistry, yeah, you can learn the word, you can read a script, you can fake the confidence, but you can't fake a class two. A real skill, you can't Google experience. Somebody who has spent those hours and did it in the right way under the right mentorship will always be far ahead of you. So in this
Yeah.
doc, so you've been looking at foreign trained dentists since a while. You have seen their crown preps, their mindset, how they look at dentistry. What is your suggestion to people in 2025 who are right now applying? And you've been seeing this for years. So, what is your point of view or guidance to these kids who are coming in and preparing? What should they be approaching, or how should they be approaching towards this whole process?
Well, yeah. The number one thing is, well, okay, what are their goals? What are their immediate goals? Not, can I get into dental school? I mean, that's obviously very immediate and very important. But, what do they really, why are they going to dental school? What do they want? And I always ask my students this at the first day of the course. What is your number one thing that you need? And it's not the diploma, because too many people finish dental school, they have a diploma in their hands, but they don't have confidence. They aren't competent to do whatever a patient needs to do, needs to have done that walks through the door of their practice. Can they think on their feet? Can they problem solve? This kind of thing. And the only way to learn that is by doing a lot of clinical dentistry. So I try to design my courses so it leads them towards a more fundamental thinking in terms of clinical dentistry, because clinical dentistry is what informs why we do what we do on a typodont when you're getting ready to take an exam to get into a school. But the bottom line is you're not going to get what you need out of that school unless you do a lot of clinical practice. And that's just a matter of getting a lot of patients. So I have ways that I suggest to students that they go about getting a lot of patients and get the clinical experience that they need, because that's the absolutely critical thing. So getting into dental school is one thing, getting enough patients so you get clinical experience is another thing. When you have enough clinical experience, if you've done 50 or 80 crowns in patients before you finish dental school, you'll graduate with some confidence. You won't need to do a GPR and AEGD. You can go right into practice and do well. But that's the perspective that I want to bring to people. Even though the only thought in their mind is, okay, I got to get through these exams, there's a lot more that's sort of wrapped up in that whole thing that they need to be aware of at the same time.
So, for example, I'm gonna give you a situation that I'm a student. I came from Middle East, Pakistan, India, Cuba, Nepal. Obviously, I'm confined. I'm saving money so I can invest in these things. But I want to build a mindset and understand. Right now, I can buy a typodont at home, watch some videos, read some books. How should I start, like, from dentist school's perspective, when they are taking foreign trained dentists, what
Hmm.
can I start doing to mentally prepare myself to understand the bench exam part? Or what,
Yeah.
how, you've been in a school, you've been a faculty, how are you looking at a student and their crown prep? So what should that kid do at this moment when he's listening to us?
Well, that's a very good question. And I'll tell you, I went through this in 1992. I had students coming to me that had been practicing for many years and taking a particular exam in California for many years and just couldn't pass the exam. And they would show up at my door and they'd have literally a bag full of prep teeth from a typodont, hundreds of prep teeth. And so they were working and working and working and working, and they were trying to duplicate something they saw as a picture of a ideal class 2 prep in a textbook. It doesn't work like that. It's just a matter of, do you know why the prep is done that way? Not do you see a picture in a textbook as to what an ideal prep looks like. If you understand the reasoning behind it, if you understand the fundamental principles of, okay, we're restoring a tooth, what's wrong with the tooth, what are the materials we're working with, and so forth, then you can figure out how the prep has to be designed in order to serve the patient well. When a faculty member at a school looks at a typodont prep that a student has done in a competitive exam like this, they can see in an instant what that student understands and what they don't understand. It's just bang, like that. And they're looking for somebody that really has an understanding. They could look at a prep that, it might even be a beautiful prep in terms of its, you know, how smooth it is and how well done it is and so forth. But if there's one thing that, like for a crown prep, if it doesn't fit the opposing tooth in a way that makes sense in terms of doing clinical dentistry, clearly that person, they might know how to do a beautiful prep, but it's not one that would serve the patient. It wouldn't work clinically. So they don't understand what's really important about that. So that's my emphasis from the beginning is, why are we doing the prep this way? If that makes sense to you, then what you have when you leave my courses is you have that. If you just learn how to do a prep by memorizing a sequence of steps, then when you finish the course, it's gone. It's the sense behind it. It's the fundamental principles that determine how much is actually going to be retained by you. And I've seen people do that I worked with 30 years ago that they tell me they're still doing preps the same way they did when I taught them 30 years ago, because it just works. So there's a lot more to it than just doing a prep that looks like you see in a textbook. But unfortunately, when people choose to approach the whole thing in that fashion, they might actually do a prep that looks good enough to pass an exam, but then they won't be able to bring to their patients a fundamental understanding that's really going to help them excel while they're in school and actually doing what we really do, which is work on patients.
Makes sense, Doc. So, just to give us a little bit understanding, what year did you graduated, and when did you started teaching in Loma Linda, and how did you started up establishing an institution of your own where you taught people? So, how was this journey as a fresh grad you came out, and how did you landed up where you are right now?
It was quite a journey. When I was in, I had been a teacher in chemistry before I went to dental school, so I had a background in that. So, and I always loved learning, and I loved being a student again. I started dental school when I was 40, and I just had a blast. I was just it's just so much fun. And so the whole learning process to get back into that environment again was, I was like home. So anyway, I started study groups when I was a first and second year student. I started study groups for people, other students, and so forth. We'd share what we learned and this kind of thing. The school found out I was doing that, and they asked me if I would help prepare the second year students for their national boards. So I said, okay, and then they paid me to do that. And then the dean found out that I was doing that, and he said, would you like to teach here after you graduate? And I said, I would like that very much. So he basically gave me a job offer. So as soon as I graduated dental school, the next day, I was on the faculty. So when I was on the faculty and starting out that way, I started, he had one day a week where you could do private practice. So I was associating in a private practice for 9 months before I started my own private practice. But what started this extra teaching, the international dentist teaching, I never considered it. It wasn't a plan.
Mhm.
One of my co-faculty members who had taught me perio when I was a student, she had graduated from this country, but she got her perio in England, and then when she came back to the US, she wanted to get licensed. I had just taken my licensure exam, and so she just came to me and said, would I help her prepare for her licensure exam? She hadn't picked up a handpiece to do a crown prep or a class two in 10 years. So
Mhm.
she said, would I help her? And I said, sure. So we got together on Sunday afternoons. Then she found some other people in the library that wanted to have similar help. So now I had four people Sunday afternoons. We were mounting extracted teeth and tympanoids and doing preps. I'm critiquing everybody and taking them all the way through it. And so they got through their exam, and then the word spread. And the next thing I knew, I had 8 students for the next exam. For this, it was a California clinical exam at that point, and they were all international students. Well, not all. Some were people that were coming from other states to get into California, and they just had to pass. So they wanted to do everything they could to prepare. So, the next class I had 8 students, and then after that I had 2 classes of 15. It just grew because the need was there. And then one of the guys that was in the class of 8 students, he was Syrian, and his wife was preparing for the precursor exam, which is the California bench test, which was on a typodont. And so he asked me if I would help her with that exam. And I said, I've never heard of that exam because I didn't need to take that, of course. And so I said, okay, if she can get 3 of her friends and then have 4 people, and then I set up my garage. I got a compressor. I set up my garage, and those have affectionately become known as my garage students now. And there are about 100 of them over a 3 year
Oh, wow.
period. And so I had 10 people at a time working in my garage in the heat of the summer and the cold of the winter. We even had a skunk came into the garage one time while all the students were there. And so we had some amazing experiences, but it taught me one thing that was especially critical for my awareness, that there are people out there, the international dental community,
Mhm.
that have an extreme need to get a very high level of education to supplement what they learned in their country, wherever they are from, so that they could bring that worldly experience to this country. And especially back then, I was teaching just for California exams. And the courage that I saw in every one of my students just blew my mind. I just thought I don't know that I would have ever had the courage to pursue a course that they were. So I wanted to help with that.
So, Doc, here's a question. Since you're talking about courage, going to a dentist school at the age of 40 is not a norm, at least in the era that I'm seeing. That takes some time to make decisions, and you were already teaching, and financially you're in a cycle, and then becoming a student. Or I would love to be a student again. I try my best to take courses and stuff, but economically, after a certain age, going under student loan and being full-time student is a big price in US. And
Yeah.
so why dentistry at the age of 40? I'm just, when I was listening, I was like, why not engineering schools? Because you're a chemistry person, you could go into that side. You can go into
Yeah.
pharmaceutical, maybe med school. Like, how did you landed up the calling of becoming a dentist, and have, you're a teacher, you're by default, you have the spirit of a teacher. You went towards dentistry at that age. So how did that ended up?
Well, yeah, there's a story behind that one too. At the time, I was married to another chemist, and we both had jobs on the East Coast. And at one point, she decided that she wanted to change out of chemistry. So she tried dental school for 1 month and hated it. But but she came home with, the first year students have to buy all this cool stuff,
Yeah.
and when I saw an articulator, I went, that is so cool. I said, dentists do a lot more precise work than I ever even imagined. I just thought, drill a hole and fill it up. I didn't know anything about dentistry. I didn't even know how many teeth there were in the mouth at that point. But I saw that articulator and hand pieces and stuff like that because I've always liked uh, instruments and tools and things like that. So I looked at that and I said, oh, this mimics the jaw movement. That is just the coolest thing ever. So anyway, she decided that dentistry wasn't for her. So then she decided, okay, that she's going to apply to medical school. And so it makes it easier if you have a couple and one of them goes back to the school and the other one is in the job, that puts some stress on their relationship because, that's a pretty big change.
Yep.
All of a sudden one person's not earning anything. Well, it's a lot easier when neither person is earning anything. So she went to medical school and I went to dental school in the same school. And so that made it much more acceptable. Challenging. We had a 2-year-old. You have a newborn. We had a 2-year-old at the time. And so, I was the one that was kind of responsible for making sure that he got taken care of throughout the process. So I had to budget my time exquisitely carefully and learn how to study efficiently. But, I'd been studying all my life, so it was pretty natural. And as a chemist, I'd never had biochemistry. I just thought biochemistry was the coolest thing ever. And anatomy and physiology, there's just nothing better than that. So, I just loved it and it was easy to do.
And Doc, if you don't mind me asking, what profession were your parents in?
My parents,
Yeah.
my mother was an interior designer
Uh-huh.
and my father was basically a salesman all of his life. But I remember one time I came back from college and he was trying to learn how to sell a material that would cover cement and architectural buildings to protect them from water damage. And I came back from college and he was down in the basement and he had all these rock samples spread out all over the whole place. And he
Mhm.
was he was he was experimenting. He was trying different things in different conditions and putting them in water and stuff like that. And I thought, that's where I get that. I'd never seen that side of him before.
Mhm.
But he just figured out what he had to learn and figured out how to do it. And so he was a born experimentalist. So that's kind of what I've always been, but I
Yeah,
was pleased to see that.
makes sense. That's what I was trying to figure out. Where did you get this exploration? Because people don't understand, becoming dentist is one thing, but having the courage to revamp your identity at 40 or even later on, it takes a lot of courage. Like a lot of us want to learn in life, but we as a father, I can tell people, a lot of, once you have kids, you give up what you like to meet the ends meet for your family. That's the
Yeah.
sacrifice most men told me. Like, yeah, I like painting or I like to play football, but now I have to make sure I work on weekends. So I am the
Yeah.
father who had the money to pay for my kids and everything. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. A lot of people have to give up their passion in order to do that. But you've been somebody who got to fight that battle in different times and still able to do what you had to do where you are. But now, coming to the teaching part, and I talked to somebody yesterday. She was from Massachusetts, and she said, "Oh, I took Dr. Duggan's course," and I said, "How was it?" She was like, "Very intense for me. I never
Hmm.
like we had to sat around for 10 hours every day doing bench exam, like doing crown preps and getting it reviewed." So, if, for example, I'm a student, I'm watching this, I want to sign up and come and learn from you. How does your? I know you would have different courses, but the main one for foreign trained dentists, what is
Yeah.
your course look like? What do they get to do over how many days, and what should they be expecting out of it?
Yeah. Yeah. So we have two courses. We have a 5-day course and a 10-day course. The 5-day course is pretty intense because we've got to get a certain amount of things in there, understanding, and basically I emphasize three things in all my courses, and that's important to realize. As we talked about a little bit ago, the principles behind the design of the preparation, critically important. The basic skill of doing the preparation, and that usually relates to, are you looking in the right direction so that you can see what you need to see while you're actually cutting the tooth? Most people look the wrong way. I usually give the example, most people are driving down the freeway looking out the passenger window.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so they can't see where they're going. And so that's the cause of a lot of mistakes. And I spend a lot of my time making sure people understand that. And the third thing is, can you evaluate a prep? Can you grade yourself? Can you look at your prep and determine, will that prep allow a restoration to be done that will last its expected lifetime? For amalgam, that would be 50, 60 years. For composite, 15 years, this kind of thing. Can you identify the errors that will actually cause the restoration to fail in the patient's mouth? If you can, you got it. But you've got to have all three things. You got to understand the design that helps you figure out if it's done right, and then how to actually do it right. So three things I talk about, the tripod of learning, if you want to call it that.
Mm-hmm.
So I start out every day. I talk for a couple hours,
Mm-hmm.
and we talk about whatever prep we're going to be doing for that day, and I make sure that everybody has it really, really clear. Why is the prep done that way? Not this is the way it's done. Why is it done that way? Like I said before, if you understand why things are done, if that makes sense to you, then you've got it. If you just try to memorize, okay, do it this way, step one, two, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it won't be long and you just don't have it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I talk about, okay, why we do it this way, how we evaluate it, what we look for. And then I help students through their first few preps in that day. And I help the students up until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We start at 7, so we start pretty early. So from about 9 until 2, I'm helping the students do their preps. And we have, a certain pattern, certain number of different preps in different parts of the mouth and so forth. At 2 o'clock, they get a break, half an hour, just rest and relax, have some food, this kind of thing. The afternoon part from 2:30 to 5:30 is structured a little bit differently. I give them an assigned prep to do, and then they do that. And then in the workbook that we have, there's a grade sheet that we've talked about grading a lot, so they know a lot about how to grade the prep. So then they do the prep and then they grade their own prep. And then I come back after they've done the prep and graded it. I come back and I look at the prep and I look at the evaluation and I see if they've not just done a good prep, but if they've evaluated it accurately, because that's the key. You can do a prep and hand it in on an exam, but if you don't know if it's any good or not, how does that make you feel? that's, that's a horrible thing. So it's just as important to be able to evaluate a prep as it is to actually do the prep. And so that's why we emphasize that in the afternoon. And then at 4 o'clock, I give them another prep to do, an evaluation to do, and that's the end of my day, but they work until 5:30. And then the next morning when I come in, I look at what they did in the afternoon, the prep and their evaluation. So every day goes like that. And we start out with class twos for 2 days. Start out just with the upper arch so they get used to using the mirror again. They
Correct.
really get accommodating the mirror. We talk about what makes the mirror easy to use, what makes the mirror hard to use, this kind of thing. Um, so we just do upper premolars for the first day, and then the next day we work on all four quadrants, molars and premolars and class twos. The next day after that, we start with anterior crowns, and it's all a matter of have you done the facial reduction right, and how do you do the prep so the lab can actually make a crown that's going to serve the patient well? What are all the things that would not serve the patient well, and so forth. So we have these discussions. So the third day is all anterior crown preps, and the fourth day is posterior crown preps. And the only thing that's new on the fourth day is now we're doing occlusal reduction on a more complex molar surface. The previous day we did anteriors and we did premolars, but now we're doing crown preps, whether they're full gold crown preps or PFMs, doesn't matter in this case. But we're doing the more complex occlusal reduction on molars. So a whole day is really devoted to that. They've already learned how to do chamfers and tapers and evaluating jaw and getting the right axe reduction and so forth. And then the fifth day is an exam. For the 2-week people, on Saturday, we emphasize something completely different. We say, okay, if you're going to really master something,
Mhm.
like if you're mastering a piano piece, if you're a pianist and you're mastering a half-hour piano concerto, you don't practice by doing the whole thing and then doing the whole thing and doing the whole thing. You take 30 seconds of this piano piece and you master that. And then you move on to the next 30 seconds and you master that. So if you want to learn how to do a class two in that with that kind of mastery, then you take 5 teeth and you do just the isthmus on all 5. Then you do the dovetail on all 5. You master each individual step by doing it multiple times. And so again, that's how any performer really learns how to do things well. It was really interesting. I made a YouTube video called Mastering the Class 2, and it was all about what we do on that Saturday. And it was in the demonstration playlist on my channel.
So what's the name of your channel if people want to look it up right now?
Yeah, it's YouTube at Duggan Oral Design.
Duggan Oral Design. All right.
Yeah. And so anytime you want to find me, it's Duggan Oral Design. There's another Duggan out there, which is a different thing, but Duggan Oral Design, that's
So,
me.
yep, I'm gonna go on a tangent up here. Uh,
Okay.
I get a lot of candidates who are looking for you, who want to go to Dr. Duggan for his preparation courses, and they Google and they see a Duggan Institute and they end up clicking there. I want everybody to know this. If you want to get training under Dr. Michael Duggins, who's sitting right in front of me, his institute name is Duggins Oral Design.
Yeah,
So
Duggan singular, Duggan Oral Design, no
oral
S.
training. And
Yeah.
what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the description, like the link in the description of this channel, so people can click and they would exactly know who they are going to and where they're getting their courses at. So
Yeah.
so I know Dr. Stevenson is the second person who's been in the field for a while as well, like as long as somewhat he started after you, or you worked with him or studied with him or been in study clubs with him as well. So how's been your journey with him as well?
Yeah, well, it was great. When I graduated in 92, the first thing I wanted to do was find the closest Dick Tucker study club. So the Richard V. Tucker Cascold study clubs, that's the ultimate dentistry. And so I looked around to try to find the closest uh, group in the Dick Tucker Study Club. There were about 60 or 70 in the country. There was one about an hour and a half drive away from me, and it was in Rich Stevenson's office. And so at that point, he and his partner had a private practice in Dana Point, which is where I live now. And so they had every month they had Dick Tucker study clubs there. So you come in and you bring patients and you do really high quality work and you get mentored by somebody from the original study club in Seattle. And every year Dick comes down and mentors the group. And so anyway, I got to know Rich very well through the study club. And then he got to find out what I was doing as far as teaching at Loma Linda. He at that point had not joined the faculty at UCLA. So then he found out what I was doing at Loma Linda. He found out about teaching the bench course, the California bench exam,
Uh-huh.
the California restorative technique course, which is the one I taught in my garage. So I was telling him about that and so forth. And so he joined the faculty at UCLA, and there was a clinical course going on at UCLA at that time that was basically a review. It was set up as a review course, but it was mostly taken by people that wanted to get ready for the California board exam, the licensure exam. So he got involved with all that at UCLA. So we started doing very parallel kinds of things right around that time. So we've both been in it a long time. I think he's about 20 years younger than I am. So, he's a little bit more spry, but we both had this drive for a lot of years now. I have in recent years just when I stopped my practice and I stopped teaching, and then everything was focused 120% on the international dentist.
So right now, first of all, this club that you said is Richard D. Tucker Club, right?
Richard V. Tucker.
V Club. So is this club throughout the US and does it still exist?
It does, and it's called the Dick Tucker Academy now. And so there's not as many chapters as there used to be, and I'm not sure if there's as many international chapters as they were. It was always associated with cast gold.
Uh-huh.
They started doing ceramics, and particularly veneers at some point. And where I am teaching now at Cornerstone Institute, that's my partner in my teaching facility now is Cornerstone Institute. And my protege that has been working there and practices there, that's Maz Zindaki. And so he's a Syrian dentist who's extraordinary. So that's where he is. So that's really where I went to set up the Duggan oral design, because everything was well equipped for that. But they used to have the Dick Tucker Study Club meetings there for a few years too, because it's a great facility for teaching and learning. So yeah, I've had many people call me from around the country and say, how could I find a good dentist? And actually, on my website that I wrote in 2020, web-dds.org, I'm not sure if you run across that yet, but there's a chapter in there. I wrote it for the public.
Mhm.
And there's a chapter in there about finding a good dentist. And I mention in there, find a local Dick Tucker study club. And anybody that's in one of those study clubs cares enough about doing high quality dentistry, so they'll serve you well.
So I'm gonna be a little bit selfish and ask questions for somebody who's in my stage of life where I graduated from DDS, but I still need to learn a lot. And if do you think the study club, Richard V. Tucker study club, is still up to, because what I've learned there, I've joined a couple of study clubs in Cincinnati, Ohio, and they used to say like this used to be the gold standard 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but after COVID things wear off and the study club, I forgot the name of it. It was based over Arizona or Washington, something like that. Used to be a very famous study club, but then it just tapered off and it wasn't effective anymore, at least the Cincinnati chapter. And they were
Hmm.
figure out how to revive it, and it was like a dying fish. So I want to ask you the study club that you're, and I've heard a lot about Spears or other
Sure.
places. My only problem is I've never been a very virtual learner when it comes to 3D learning, like when it comes to like it just doesn't work for me. I have to see something in order to learn, especially when
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
PT or something. So is this club still the same level like it used to be? And when you compare it to Spears or other institutions like these, uh, what's your suggestion on that for people who are in my stage or who just graduated and trying to figure out how to improve themselves?
Well, yeah, it's a I think that any of the doctor study clubs that are still around are uh, definitely worth going to. You're going to be meeting other dentists that truly care about the patient and about doing the highest quality dentistry. And these days, the vast majority of dentists out there are going to tell their patients, so nobody does gold crowns anymore, and nobody does amalgams anymore. And yet, that is literally a very unrealistic view. It's more of a self-serving view. If everybody really cared about the quality of the work that they were doing for their patients and whether they were doing work that the patients could afford, that wouldn't cost much at the beginning and would last a very long time, then there are a lot of restorative techniques that we would still be using much more than we do. The Ducker Study Club is one that really emphasizes the gold restorations. And again, if gold were white, nobody uses any ceramics anymore because gold has all the advantages. And so there's impact to that. So yeah, I look at dentists that are out there that the temptations are there certainly to be doing a lot of dentistry that is what the dentist wants to do, but it's not necessarily the best thing for the patient.
Well, one of the things I hit into the wall now, like I just started a practice. And as a dentist, I want to do a lot of things, but the freaking insurance doesn't let me, and they kind of control a lot of it. And then people who are at your age tell me, listen, as a young doc, you need to get to a point where you can let go of these insurances and you're not being held by them and you have to provide quality care. And it's something
Yeah,
that you have to deal with. And right now, on average, the student that's coming out is coming out with 400,000 approximate of student loan. And
yeah,
local DDS student might have more because they have undergrad loan too. And the best option they have to deal with is to end up going into a DSO or a corporate. And once you if your early start has been with those REMs and it's just it grows on you, that's your pattern, that's your muscle memory, that's what you learned about dentistry is all about speed and production at a certain level and
yeah,
find the cheapest material and go. And it's right now dentistry is it's quite a struggle. As a dentist, you have this inner calling, you want to do the best, and then like I people who are watching this, for me, like as a dentist, I thought I will go and I will provide the best care in the best way I can. But as soon as I started a business, they would like $30,000 of insurances you have to buy for yourself, for your life insurance, for your workman compensation, and all of that. And the bank comes to knock your door because they're going to take their money. So I'm like, okay,
yeah,
it's going to be a little bit process. I need to when I talk to mentors like you people, they said you have to slowly work your way up and get that oxygen. It's not going to happen in day one, but you're going to consistently take these onion layers off. Eventually, you get yourself out of these insurances and you let your patient know, like, in order for me to provide you the best care, we have to stop listening to these insurances. Uh, so
well, it's tempting for you, I would imagine. I mean, as a practice owner, it would be tempting for you to contract with a DSO to help manage your practice.
yeah,
And yet, the contract that you have to sign is like 150
slavery.
pages long.
Yeah, it's a slavery. It's a slavery bond. You're done. I'm not
Well,
gonna.
it depends. It depends on the DSO. There are a couple that are really reputable, and I have heard really great things about them. There are some that will just kill you.
Yeah, the at least the ones I saw, the big names. I'm gonna tell a very weird story. Like I saw that. So last year, if your practice did 100,000 in January, this year, if your practice is not making 100,000, it made 95,000. They will punish you as a dentist and take away that 5,000 from your share as a punishment. And I was talking to my brother in England. I told him that. He said that's what banks used to do to us. Like when we were
Mm,
in the banks, like you have to make a certain level, and if you do it 1 year or one Q1 or Q2, if you don't do it in Q3 and went a little less, they will take that piece out of your primary salary or your part just as a punishment. So the
yeah.
so that's but since you mentioned there are a couple of DSOs which are worth the salt because they do give that freedom or understanding to the dentist to provide the good care. Can you name few of them? Because at least in my world, I'm trying to find those places.
Yeah.
So
Well, the one that I'm closest to is one that has a connection with Cornerstone, and they're local around here. It's Pacific Dental Services, PDS.
okay, PDS.
They manage, I think, 1,200 practices, something like that. And I'm going to be testing them pretty soon because I have a restorative method that I'm trying to develop along with Dr. Zendaki that could potentially replace amalgam. Now, replace amalgam with an indirect method. So I call it a conservative indirect restoration. I actually have a course that I'm willing to teach on this. It's on my website, but it's basically a hybrid ceramic composite inlay onlay,
Hybrid ceramic composite inlay and onlay. Okay,
right?
trying
And
to.
if it, yeah, and if it's done by CAD CAM, you can cut it in 5 minutes. And the cementation of this particular unique ceramic hybrid uh, is very, very good. And if you do the prep just right, so you've got good enamel that you could bond to, and you've really designed the preparation right, there's no reason why it shouldn't last 30 years. And there's no reason why you'd have to charge more than $500 for it.
Wow.
That's the key. That's the key. If you're going to replace amalgam, it's got to be cheap.
Because here's the thing, like I was telling to my, and I'm people who don't understand dentistry right now from a practical world. I was telling to a friend, I was like, if I in a practice, a lot of dentists right now have to over treatment crowns because doing an MOD for 2 hours, cleaning everything up and getting paid
Hmm.
$130 by the insurance doesn't make sense to them because they can't pay their assistant. So they see an MOD, they will say, let's do a crown prep. That's what it is, crown. Let's send it. And I'm astonished these insurances will approve it rather than they can say, do an MOD, we will pay you 400, 500.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
if I'm running a fee for service and somebody's paying me 500 less and all I do an MOD, I would rather do that than to shave off everything and put an external object in the mouth, which might not be ideal at some point, and then everything goes down and it becomes an implant, right? And
yeah.
right, I was looking at how insurances are kind of like rewarding people to go for crown rather than doing an MOD
Mm.
or something like that. So if this what you're saying, if it's actually turns out to be a success, that would be a great opportunity because I personally don't enjoy God made teeth which was made by nature and I'm shaving it down into a shape.
Yeah.
I know there's a certain time and place, but sometimes it's excessive because most of us are not taught onlays or inlays in schools.
Yeah.
We
Well,
just taught.
picture this. In the second week in my 2 week course, in the second week I teach onlays. We do it as basically an exercise to get better at occlusal reduction, get better at controlling vertical angles and defining preps and so forth. So it helps the students get better at doing their class twos and their crown preps as well. But I like to use it as a way to understand more about how dentistry can be done.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I bring out models of onlays that I've done on patients, and we look at how big the boxes are. And we just finished doing full ceramic crowns, the previous week, and say, okay, look, this is what's left of the tooth. There's this big, huge box area and isthmus and so forth. So there's all this missing from the middle of the tooth. And so we can restore with a crown and use the missing area for retention. That's an onlay. But Most dentists don't understand that, so they
Yeah.
cut all the way around the
Yeah.
outside. Well, if you do an all ceramic crown and you got a CAD/CAM machine, you're doing an all ceramic crown all the way around that. The parts of the tooth that you're trying to protect by doing the crown, you're cutting off
Yeah.
to support
Yeah.
the crown.
Yeah. I think even without anybody teaching, like somewhere deep inside, from a mechanical point of view, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But because we've been trained with so less armamentarians or solutions, and then restricted with these insurances, and hardly as a dentist, we I think in my private practice, you don't get time to experiment things because right
Hmm.
now at an early phase, you're kind of even when you're associate, you're ran according to a system, so you don't have those critical thinking time unless you're part of a study club or some courses that gives you that,
Hmm.
yeah, think out of the box, take some oxygen, maybe you might come up with a different route. So I'm
Yeah.
actually, the course that you mentioned, I might sign up for a doc if I could. So can you share? So here's the question: people who are already graduated, and if they get to watch this now, most people who come out of dental school doesn't mean they are good dentists, and I will put myself in there. All right, I might be able to do one or two big procedures that helps me think keep things. I'm a little bit more surgically oriented dentist because of my previous training, and most third
Sure.
world countries, I've learned, is because in third world countries people can't afford crowns, so everybody who's walking in is coming in with a big abscess. They don't, so everybody has to become a dental surgeon.
Surgeon.
Yes,
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's the need of the society, but US doesn't work that way, especially if you're living in California or people where they come from a little bit more prophylactic. Now to develop that side of yours and learning about not just doing crown prep, soft tissues are big rabbit hole to deal with. The pain,
Yeah.
knowing when I've actually, now I get to see how many crowns are failing due to the contact point. And I'm thinking in my head, Adriel, do you know how to fix it? And I'm like, nope, you don't. And you need to learn. And this is like an ongoing voice that goes in your head. So, um, people who are like me and watching your channel, what are the courses or things that they can come and learn from you through these courses or study club that you would advise?
Well, caring, that's kind of basic, isn't it? And
Yes.
everything that you're describing, and the reality of the practice situation, a lot of it just comes down to, okay, does the dentist really care? And so that's a huge thing. And you're talking about doing MODs and class twos and large restorations, direct restorations. Um, how about if you could do them if you could do the prep in a minute and a half
Mm-hmm.
instead of 20 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, you can actually make some money doing things like that. You don't have to have the patient come back for another visit. You can make money doing operative dentistry if your speed is up. And in my courses, I teach students how they can do that, by making sure they do each step well before they do the next. I teach them, if you want to get fast, slow down.
Mm-hmm. Makes
And
sense.
there's an irony to that. If you do the first part slowly and carefully, then everything else after that just goes lickety split. So anyway, yeah, the ability to provide good direct restorations to a patient, and make money doing it would allow you to actually bring restorations to patients that are going to serve them the best and not cost them an arm and a leg. Most dentists, if you're working in a town where everybody is trying to just, they're living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
Now, what are you doing a $1,500 restoration when a $500 restoration would work just as well, or actually many times way better? What's the choices there? The dentist is making choices that are making the patient's life financially miserable. So there needs to be some responsibility there. And I know the drives in practice these days and trying to make ends meet and pay off those loans and so forth. But if you know how to do a prep efficiently and quickly and get it done well, so it really does serve the patient well, you can make just as much money as you're doing crowns. I mean, people are doing crowns and they're doing them in situations where, for example, the case I was talking about, if you're doing an all ceramic crown on a tooth that has very little tooth structure left, think about it. You're going to have to go down really deep subgingival to try to find something to hold on to. And then it takes
Yeah.
much more time doing that. It takes
Yeah.
much more time to pack the retraction cord and get a good impression. If the dentist even cares about whether he got a good impression or not. And you go to any dental laboratory and you can see how many people don't care about that. But if you're not one of those dentists and you actually do care about it, it's going to take you way more time. And you could probably I tell my students all the time, you could do gold onlays all day long and make a ton of money. And
Mhm.
yet most dentists think that, they're not going to be able to make money doing those kinds of things because, they don't understand how to do
So
them efficiently.
just to summarize, I know now we are discussing things that most students or people who are not in the field, like they might be trying to figure out what we are saying in depth. So just to summarize, correct me if I'm wrong, you as at a philosophical level, you encourage gold inlay and onlays because they can provide better solutions than cutting a crown or just
Yes.
doing large fillings, right?
I'm a big fan of intracoronal retention
Mhm.
for indirect restorations.
Mhm.
I'm also a big fan of amalgam. I get amalgams in my mouth whenever I have a filling done, and there's
Holistic
we've
dentist.
not replaced it yet. Nobody has figured out how to replace amalgam yet. But as you say, most dentists don't want to do it because it's easy to convince the patients that the patients don't want it. But that's why my web-dds.org website was set up to answer patients' questions and to give them a little bit more of a clear picture. If a patient walked into a dental practice and said and asked the dentist, "Okay, you've told me a couple things that you can do. What's going to last the longest?" Back in the days where we actually gave the patient a choice between amalgam and composite, if the patient said, "Well, which is going to last the longest?" How's the dentist supposed to react to that? He's going to have to tell them, well, the amalgam is going to last for 5 times longer over the lifetime. It's going to cost you thousands of dollars less to do an amalgam than a composite.
Mhm.
Okay, I want patients asking those hard questions. Now, it's not the most popular thing for the dentist. My website that I was just describing, I started it originally 30 years ago as a book that a dentist could put on a waiting room area so the patients could look through and get questions answered. But no, then I suddenly realized, well, no dentist is going to put that book in their waiting room. They want to educate the patients in their own way, in a very selective way. And dentists have been doing that since composite was acceptable in the patient's mouth. We've been educating the patients to believe that that's the only thing that really makes sense.
But gold, everybody knows the only reason is cost right now because everybody wants to do cost deduction. But gold has been one of the best material that withstand the forces. It makes you look rich unless you get in a wrong neighborhood and somebody snatch your teeth. But overall, gold is known to be and is one of the most solid.
And
Uh,
it's not destructive to the opposing teeth.
yes, yes. So, Doc, my question is like, so what courses are you offering, or what ways, if somebody's at my level and wants to learn from you, what courses does your institution have an opportunity for them to come and learn from you?
Well, right now, the only three courses that we have on our website, number one is, of course, the main course we do, which is for the international dentists wanting to get into dental school.
Mhm.
So that's our restorative course. Another one is the conservative indirect restoration course, which is that hybrid ceramic procedure that I was talking about. And I'm hoping to develop that more. We haven't taught it yet. It's there, it's outlined, and I would love to have people take that course. And
Maybe
I
I
want
would
to,
be the first one to sign up for that, Doc.
there we go. That would be great. And then the other one is what I call the faculty mentorship program. If any dentist wants to start thinking about teaching in a dental school, I want to help with that
Well,
because, hmm?
here's a touchy point, Doc. And now I'm gonna ask you some questions, right? And you're whatever you're comfortable. When I went to dentist school, and they might not like me saying this, but a lot of people who were very similar to you, I saw them leaving during COVID or after.
Hmm.
I was there witnessing. So all of these, I grew up in a house of teachers. I can smell one out. I can sense. And I don't like chemistry, but if I like my chemistry teacher, I learn it. That's how my brain has been tuned to. I don't know why, but it's never the subject. It's usually a person who inspires, and I end up
Hmm.
learning because of them. Now, dental schools over time change a lot due to a lot of political, structural leadership. God knows, I don't want to be saying things that I'm not fully aware of, but I could see that change happening. And a lot of this faculty, when they were leaving, I would ask them, they said, I would rather be more happier teaching the same thing in a CE course rather than in dental school where I'm not allowed to talk about those things. And I
Uh-huh.
felt like I'm doing a disservice to these young kids. Now, if they have, and I was like, what should I do then? He was like, go and do a GPR or an AGD or go and take C courses. That's the best advice I can give you, kid. And I felt very, at that time, dissatisfied because I was 30 when I started school, and because of traveling and stuff, I wouldn't say I was a typical like a young person when I was going into the school. And you can see like there were things getting hold off away from you because either go into a residency or we will just teach you enough so that you don't kill a person while doing basic dentistry, and then you go out, take your license, and figure out what you're going to do. And I do understand there's a legal liability, there's a specialist concern too. They don't want all the GPs doing all the crazy stuff and big things as well. And so now, when I don't know how you look at things, and you might disagree with me, but I personally feel there's more learning from individuals like you who are not dental schools, but their biggest advantage is they are free
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
say whatever. Nobody's holding you to say against or for amalgam. You can say whatever you feel right. There's no administration telling you not to teach this to the kids anymore. You can
Right.
say your own belief, you can say in the words or vocabulary that you want to use, and nobody will judge you for that. So what's your thought about right now people who want to learn more or want to be in academic places, but dental schools are not meeting the needs that they internally have?
Well, for example, if I were an international dentist and I passed an exam when I got into a school, I tell my students, go out and get patients. And there are ways of doing that. You don't wait for the school to give you the patient. Go outside the
Mhm.
school, get a lot of patients and get complicated ones. Get patients that are going to challenge you, get patients that are going to be good problem solving situations. And, when you get enough variety of patients, there are going to be a variety of different solutions that are suggested or that suggest themselves, a lot of different possible solutions. And you work through those with the faculty. And, my firm belief is you work through those with faculty members and figure out what's the best thing to do. That there are times where the best thing to do is, just to use this example again, is an amalgam. And, it might be politically untenable in the school at that point to do an amalgam, but force the issue. I would, because there are just times where you just don't have, there's just no other alternative that's going to serve the patient well. And
Yep.
dental schools, really, to my mind, it's all about serving the patient well. At least that's what it should be. If it isn't, then the students can force that, because when the students bring in a lot of patients, and they really care about the patients, the individual faculty members at the school should be, and I'm sure do, really support the students in their care of the patients. Yeah, it might run afoul of some corporate dialectic at the dean level in some schools, whatever. Yeah, it's a fight that, is going to be happening in the practice environment as well. It's time that the students really get all aspects of that figured out. But it is tough, like you say. There might be schools that have a political leaning in
Alignment.
certain ways,
Mhm.
but that's not appropriate when it comes to the fact that, these are patients, these are people, and, our goal is to serve them well, period. That's it.
Yep. One thing I've learned is what you're saying is in order to learn, you are going to make mistakes. That's just what I'm learned. And I feel if your patients, I try my best. I work in a rural practice, so people are a little bit more nicer to at least with me. So I tell them, listen, I'm gonna try to fix what God made, and this is a man trying to work on something that God has made. It won't be, it will never be 100%, but as a human, I'm gonna give my best effort. All right.
Yeah.
So you have to work along with me. If there's something that might go different or we had to redo it, but I want you to be on the same page. That's what I've learned is that typodonts are good to teach you the basic stuff. Books can give you understanding, but eventually the clinical exposure of putting in that 100,000 hour in anything that you love to do, whether it's a root canal, whether it's an extraction, whether it's a class 2, if you haven't put in those hours, you're always going to be shaky about what you're doing. It's just, and the funny thing is everybody's saliva flow is different. Everybody's tooth
Oh,
angulation,
yeah.
mouth opening, cheek fat. There's like so many things that you can never. There's always something new you get to deal with.
That's what makes dentistry fun.
Yep.
It's always something unexpected. If it were the same thing day in and day out, it would be boring. Dentistry is definitely not boring. Every patient that walks through the door, it's like some new thing. It's amazing.
It makes sense, Doc. Yes, and one thing I'm gonna go back to our foreign trained dentist community thing, and but I would definitely suggest how you mentioned you have a mentorship for people who want to go into dentist school. Maybe if you have a course for people who are at my level and wants to come
Hmm.
learn restorative pros or basic treatment planning and occlusion, if there's some kind of mentorship, I would be the first one to maybe join you, sir. Uh,
Yeah.
yep.
Well, one of the things is I've had over the last year and a half, I've had two students that have shown enough promise so that they're really thinking about teaching. And so that's where things really ramp up a lot because then I have them come in and they use my camera system for teaching and they teach some of my students that took my classes before and I mentor them as they're teaching, as they're communicating back and forth and so forth. So that's a wonderful process and we're building up towards actually having one of those courses probably early next year. That's my goal. But anyway, yeah, every dentist that I've had in my classes, even just for the international dentist, getting into, the advanced standing program kind of course, my restorative course, I teach it as a restorative dentistry course. I don't teach it as a here's what you have to do to get past this exam.
Mhm.
It's restorative dentistry. And I've had a lot of dentists that have come in and they're dentists. Make no mistake about it. A lot of them have done. One of the students I had not too long ago had gone through a graduate PROS program. And so, she had a lot to learn about prosthodontics on the typodont. And so that was a good experience for me. Even somebody that has, had some advanced training, there's more to learn when
Oh,
you really look at it carefully and really think about every aspect of it. And that's what I try to do with
that's
every student, no
that's
matter
true.
how much experience they have.
True, and I think finding mentors like the biggest thing in a dentistry, like evolutionary, like it's like hunting or carving, like it's a hand skill, and you will only learn if you're an apprentice to a mentor. Maybe you
Hmm.
full time, but you have to find those mentors somewhere virtually, physically, with traveling, because it's like that's how the field works. And
Yeah.
I just feel, yeah, somebody once told me if you want to be successful in life, pray that God gives you either a very good mentor and a very good spouse. If you get one of them who's not good, you're good. It becomes tough. But
Well, I have had some really great mentors in my life. That's for sure.
that I can see, and you have that soul of a teacher by the end of the day. So, Doc, coming back to it, this foreign trained dentist, if you're still listening to this, understand what Doc is saying, that a lot of us are in fight and flight. So when I come in as an immigrant, I want to get in dental school. I'm under loans. I want to show my family. I want to become a dentist. I want to prove my ego that still a doctor in US. But
Yeah,
what he's saying, if you go a little bit further ahead of this flight and forward survival mode, you can actually learn about dentistry that will help you not only in dental school, but also when you come out and private work in a private practice, you're going to be far ahead of your peers. So look at
absolutely.
what he's saying. From I would When I was applying to school, COVID came, so there was no chance of going to any of the hands-on courses. There was no bench exam, everything went virtual. But if I would have a chance, I would have taken this course. Why? Because today it would have solved more questions for me when I look at a crown and I'm seeing at the pocket that has become leading to perio problem, and eventually that person is going to lose their tooth. And in my head now I'm thinking, okay, you need a mentor to solve this problem. Otherwise, you're not doing good for your patients. So
Yeah,
invest in something that just not only helps you pass that exam, but helps you build that better future. So you're not sitting where I am sitting at the moment. Because to
yeah,
be honest, you might get into a dental school, which is good, and hopefully you find mentors in dental school that teach you better. But in case they don't, then you will be paying later on at a CE courses or a study club to understand this. So,
yeah.
Doc, and hopefully I'll stay in contact with you more about learning about these courses. So people who want to sign up for the Duggan oral design course as an advanced standing student or a foreign trained dentist, Doc has given me this opportunity. The students that are working with me in my interview process, in my personal statement, other CAAPID process, I can provide them 10% discount at Doc's courses. So if you're interested and you've been working with me, reach out to me. Even if you want to directly sign up, you can go to his website. I'm going to post the link in the description. You can click on it, read it. If you have any questions, you can call his office or email them, ask questions. I would say utilize this opportunity while you can. Yes, financially, you will feel it might be a little bit burden, but understand this is a marathon. It's like a seed you're putting in, because eventually this is going to be a tree that's going to produce you a lot of fruit. So I know as a immigrant, the fight and flight mode, the survival, we only think about one bread at a time. But think about the person that you're going to be in 2030 or 40, and what would be the advantage of learning from a person like Dr. Duggan. So, Doc, any last advice before we end this video? I don't want to take more of your prestigious time, but any more any last advice that you would tell people on this video who are preparing or going through this process of dreaming of becoming a dentist in US? Anything that you would tell them?
Well, I was just reacting to your fight or flight description. Yeah, that's a very focused, a very intense, kind of jerky
Yeah.
kind of reaction to things. And so I have students that come into my classes that are like that. And I just have to say, okay,
I'm
let's
done. Yeah.
spread out. Let's spread
Yeah.
out. Let's slow down. Let's go back to the beginning and really figure things out. I've had dentists that have practiced for 25 years that, take a class from me, just like my normal classes, that learn to enjoy their practice so much better just because now they understand why things are done the way that they are. What's the reasoning behind it? They become much better problem solvers and so forth. So yeah, to become a problem solver, for things to make sense, you leave that fight or flight stuff behind and you just take a deep breath, get that oxygen, and then all of a sudden things start to become more clear, and we just take those clear things and stack them up, and then it changes a lot. And you're never going to get that by just learning how to do the step 1 through 10 and you got to prep.
Yeah.
That's doesn't work.
The reason I said those words, Doc, because when I started this practice, like all of a sudden I had to let go of two people. One of the persons stole something from me, and then there were a lot of bills coming in. And all of a sudden I've been like, I went back to that flight, and I've never, and as a one thing I've learned as a coach, as a mentor, as a teacher, people are coming to you to find some hope. But then for the past 2 weeks or a month, I was fighting my own self because I didn't had that hope in me. Because
Yeah.
I went back to my old patterns of fight and flight. And it just reminded me of my early migration where you're saving that every penny because you're worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. And I do understand that. But by the end of the day, I'm turning 35, and I've realized the world problems are never going to end. Whatever you feel, your internal world is going to project your external world eventually. So if I
Hmm.
keep telling myself and I'm in a fight and flight and my cortisol keeps going up, eventually everything's going to become that way. So whatever happens, and calm your internal world, so eventually
Yeah.
you can find some solution in the external. And it's a fight, at least for somebody like me. I'm always this really driven kind of like that fight and flight kind of person, and dealing with traumas and stuff. But and the reason I'm saying this, because some people might be able to relate with it. And I've
Hmm.
learned, if you're calm, you attract people who are in that state. Yeah, maybe it
Yeah.
costs you in that timely, that minute or that second, but eventually you will end up attracting the energy that you're sitting in. And if you're in a panic mode, well, congrats, you just welcome more panic into your life. And
Yeah. Yeah.
funny for me, I tell people, my friends laugh at me and they say, you track traumas. Like I work, so I do sedations and wisdom teeth and full mouth. So I get a lot of people who've been past opioid addiction. So
Yeah.
that comes in for sedation because they have a lot of anxiety. On top of that, when I'm doing these coaching, so a lot of people who come for interview help and stuff, who have a lot of anxiety, and their spouse is like, give this money to somebody and let him deal it. And I'm by the end of the day feeling like, okay, as a teacher, as a mentor, and same with you, sir, is that people who are coming in to you are not just coming for teaching, they are coming for that
Yeah.
hope of a
Yeah.
better future. And at times, as a teacher, when you don't have that in you and you have to give it, that's a very dark place, because you might end up giving them the negative aspect rather than hope.
Well,
So,
I hope I convey to students what good dentistry actually looks like. If that's all I did, then I'd be doing my job. Because good dentistry is just doing dentistry that serves the patient well, that lasts a long time, it lasts as long as it should.
mhm,
That's the key to the whole thing right there. And of course, respond to the patient's needs, psychologically and so forth, and
yep,
make it comfortable for the patient, but make it long-term comfortable for the patient, in which case you've done something that really serves them for a long period of time. This is what good dentistry looks like, instead of just you know the things we've talked about before. And so when my students leave, I think they have a better picture as how dentistry should be done.
makes sense.
And yeah, this, what we do, we just,
Do you do veneers? Do you teach veneers or anything like that right now, Doc?
I don't now, in my normal course, but I certainly have in the past. And that's,
Is that something on a philosophical level? Do you like veneers? What's your perspective on it? Do you think there's a time and place to do veneers?
yeah, in fact, I could probably use with a good set of veneers myself.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
these guys right here, that would be very helpful. I'd look a
Well,
lot better.
well, Doc, your aura covers all of it. You're a teacher. I don't know how much you read mythologies and stuff. Every big story have a wise gray-haired man a visit. Like if you go, it's Dumbledore in Harry Potter, is Merlin in King.
My beard's not that long.
Well, the aura is the wise man's aura. That's the teacher's aura. So whatever teeth you would have, that aura will be bigger than that. So I think that compensates for it. So well, I'm grateful, Doc, for this conversation. It's a lot of learning and a blessing. And hopefully, I don't know how many people would sign up today or tomorrow. I would be looking forward to learning from Doc even at this point of life as soon as I can. So thank you for that. And hopefully, if I'll put all your description, your website. Make sure, guys, if you're looking for Dr. Michael Duggins, you go to Duggins Oral Design website, not the other one, because you won't find him there. He's at the Oral Design. And hopefully I'll hope to have more conversations with you, Doc, in the future. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks very much, Adriel.